it's really exciting for us. We have got a really quite a large panel to move into now. As everybody listening will be aware that wellness has been a subject and mental health has been a subject that has been close to most people's hearts for quite some considerable period. But of course, moving into lockdown, it became rather accelerated and accentuated because of all the problems and issues that have been raised as a consequence of that. And so HR has taken even more of the lead in making sure that that has been raised on many people's agendas. And so we've got a panel now to discuss those issues and how it's played out for these particular retailers and organizations through this period and how they're looking to move it forward as well. So I would like to hand over to Amy Prendergast, who's the Director of Change, People and Learning at the retailTRUST. So Amy, if I can hand over to you, I will allow you to move us through this topic with the panel. So over to you.
Fab, thank you very much, Paul. So good afternoon, everyone, and a big warm welcome to our session this afternoon, putting wellbeing and compassion at the heart of retail. So as Paul said, I'm the Director of Change, People and Learning for the retailTRUST. For those of you that may not know us, we have since 1832 been at the heart of how the retail industry cares for, protects and improves the lives of its most valuable asset, its people. I'm delighted to be chairing our session today, and I'm joined by some fantastic panelists. And if we can, panelists, I think if we can just do some quick round introductions to kick things off, that would be great. So Emma?
Hi everyone, so I'm Emma Mamo and I'm Head of Workplace Wellbeing at Mind, the mental health charity. So I oversee all of our programs that work with employees around mental health in the workplace. So very happy to be here today.
Thank you. Una?
Hi everyone, my name is Una O'Reilly. I'm really pleased to be here with you today to talk about mental wellbeing. I work for Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield and head up the global arm of engagement, which wellbeing and diversity is a kind of key element. So really pleased to be with you today.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I am running my own consultancy now called the Ludo Partnership, which does HR and wellbeing in the workplace. And prior to that, I was VP of HR for Europe and Global Head of Wellbeing for Tapestry, that owns Coach Kate Spade and Stuart Wiseman. Good to be with you today.
Louise?
Hi everybody, it's lovely to be here. I'm Louise Stonier and I sit on the executive board at Pets at Home Group as Chief People and Culture Officer. So I'm responsible for all of our people across the group, including our retail colleagues, but also our vet colleagues as well. But I'm also responsible for our social purpose strategy, which obviously people is a real core part of that. And in a previous life, I was a legal director. So I'm a lawyer by trade, but moved over to the people side a couple of years ago.
And Katrina.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm excited to be here today. I am a change and wellbeing program lead at Farfetch, which looks after both wellbeing and change. So we'll be covering a bit of that today.
Great, thank you. And just to say to our audience, we do have a live Q&A function for today's session, so please do put your questions forward. This is a really great opportunity to get some insights from our panellists, who between them have a wealth of experience. So do please take advantage of that. So before we dive into our session this afternoon, I do just want to say a few words really to set the scene. So given where we are in the year, which I think most will agree it's been a somewhat extraordinary year in professional terms anyway, but with the official arrival of autumn, we're all facing the reality that COVID-19 cases are most definitely on the rise across many parts of the world, and it's looking likely to worsen as we enter the winter months. Nevertheless, life and work must continue. Business and leaders, no doubt, I'm sure, have learnt a lot over the past 6 months since the onset of COVID, predominantly around the importance of looking after the mental health and well-being of employees. And as we get ready and brace for the next wave of the pandemic and the significant impacts it is going to continue to have on workers, it really is essential that businesses are able to address workplace culture, mental health and well-being. And whilst it's commonly known that 1 in 4 adults in the UK will experience a mental health problem at some point in their lifetime, a lot of our beliefs at the Retail Trust is that we should be there for the 4 in 4 colleagues who experience a setback or a life event, and we will be campaigning across October to really push and promote that message. And our session today will take a look at what we know so far about mental health and well-being through drawing on the insights and experiences of our panellists and the organisations they work for, and really with the aim of equipping you with a framework to take back to your organisation and create a well-being and mental health strategy. So I think that kind of leads us nicely into kind of the first question that I'm going to ask to really kick off our discussion. And that is, how can businesses prioritise workers' mental health as we prepare for a second wave of COVID-19? Louise, I'm looking at you. If you'd like to kick us off.
Yeah, no problem, Amy. So, I think we'll probably all agree that this just galloped on us, even though, we saw what was happening in the rest of the world. And, like everybody else, I'm sure we took steps to get ourselves ready, but it still came at us with huge force many months ago. And one of the things that we did, and this still really rings true, is at the centre of everything that we did, we quickly prioritised everything. And our number 1 priorities was to keep our customers, our colleagues, our pets in our stores and their pets really safe, and just to do the right thing. And that's still with us. So even as we're heading into the second wave, that priority has not changed. And if I go back to those early days, there was a couple of things that we really focused on, and I still think they ring true, even though, we're 7 months down the line. So the first thing that we did, we looked at our internal comms, because we found that our colleagues, they just wanted the reassurance from us. We'd gone through panic buying, which was extremely scary for our colleagues because they were there on the front line. And that was before lockdown. It was not a great experience, I have to say. And then quickly into lockdown, which brought challenges with guidance that changed, every minute of the day. So what we did is that we deciphered that for our colleagues, and we quickly, myself and the CEO, did daily video updates to our colleagues where we literally just translated what was happening. And with every question that we got, and we had a wave of questions from our colleagues because they really looked to us for guidance, we made sure we were really connected to what was happening. We were able to answer them. Or if we couldn't answer them, we'd say that we would have an answer for you once we kind of worked our way through it. And in that, we kind of wrapped around, I think the second thing that we did is that we made it okay for our colleagues to speak up and ask for help. And we created that really safe environment. And we gave kind of a toolbox really of help that, our managers had, our colleagues had, that they could tap into. So, one of the big causes of mental health, and it continues to be, and we see it come through our colleagues on a day-by-day basis, is financial hardship. And it's impacting them in such a different way. So regardless of what we're doing, and we're in a fortunate position, we can really support them. They may be impacted because a family member has lost a job. They may be in a household where they live with parents and the parents have lost the job, and suddenly, they are looking after the whole of their household. So we put £1 million into a colleague hardship fund, which has been there for colleagues to tap into. But also making it okay for them to tap into it. We found that they were very proud at the beginning. So we've really had to continuously drive home that messaging that it's okay. It's here to support you. You might need some equipment for your children because they haven't got a laptop. You might need, I don't know, a new dishwasher that's broken, a new washing machine. Something might have happened to put you in a really unfortunate position, or you might just need, some money just to keep, your roof over your head, and we're here to help you. So, we've really supported our colleagues through our colleague hardship fund. We've supported colleagues through grants at home as well, so enabled them to set up an office at home if they didn't have a safe place to work as well. But then we've also really focused on the emotional side and the emotional well-being, and created a buddy system. So every director connected with an area across the operations, which is about 24 stores for each director. And we all tapped into them bi-weekly, so we'd phone them and just see what was going on in their world, what was their reality, because whatever is happening is their reality. And through that, we were able to then react, and we were able to put, further measures in place to support them. So we had quite a lot of colleagues that, had caring responsibilities. We didn't take job retention, but we were able to still support and fund them to go on caring furlough if they needed it. We've just put into place some family support leave, because we're hearing that, colleagues I know, because I've had my daughter sent home to be self-isolated. She did a week at school and she got sent home for 2 weeks. And it's more challenging for colleagues on the front line. So we've put in some family support leave, so a bank of days that they can then draw down and tap into if they need to look after, a child or another dependent. So, we've really supported both in terms of equipping them with a kind of a bank of things that they can tap into. But we also created kind of the emotional support as well. And I think just the big thing which we put in place, which has really helped colleagues, is we created a wellbeing community on our intranet. And we've had thousands of colleagues join it, and they might post pictures of their pets on there and what their pets have been up to, or they might be having a bad day and they post that, and they just want some support. And it is like a family at this company, because we are an all family company, and that stayed with us. And it's the Pets at Home family, and that has been amazing. And we now do weekly videos. We don't do daily videos. We do a Better Together video. We do a COVID update. There's other colleagues on there now across the business, but being able to see the leaders, and the leaders, still there, still there, still working. We're here. We're looking after you. We post that on the Wellbeing page as well. So, it's been great to see the colleagues' reaction to all of those different things that we've been doing. And we're just conscious now, as we head into winter, head into dark nights, that we've just got to go back and re-energize it again, because I think it's going to be tough the next couple of months.
Really great, and lots of comprehensive support. I guess I'll open up to our other panel members. Are there similarities? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think, I love joining a Zoom and then crashing in a few minutes, and I think it's kind of quite symbolic for what's happened the last 6 months. So hi again. Very similar, Unibail-Rodamco-Westfield, so Westfield in the UK. So very similar to a lot of things Louise mentioned. We had your wellbeing framework as part of our social responsibility strategy. It was beautiful in place, and we'd done a lot of, life before 2020, a lot of things we thought were really good. And then we clearly realized that we needed to do a lot more and really up the gear. So before COVID, we had worked with an organization to put in non-HR certifications in terms of mental health first aid. So we had over 24% of our employees actually trained up as mental health first aiders. And that was useful last year, but totally invaluable for this year. And our employees really reached out and worked closely with the mental health first aiders. In addition to kind of the physical, financial aspects we put in for well-being, such as kind of grants, extending our leaves, etc. We also I did global well-being emails, and at the beginning we thought, oh, I'll do these for a few weeks, and then the feedback was just really positive, and that was about reminding people of the employee assistant helpline, to sharing, as Lee's saying, sharing photographs of what kids were doing at home, and just that whole mental connection. The mental kind of reaching out. We had a lot of employees who are in homes that they're sharing with people they don't know. So they were all self-isolating, and there was just a lot of challenges. So we really supported our employees on a daily basis through that. And then just in terms of working, giving people, I guess, educating areas in terms of mental well-being. So we worked really closely with CHAMPS and the Wellbeing project, and put in a wellbeing webinar every single week for 6 months, and they will continue now on a bi-weekly basis. And then just again, people had the option to tune in or out, but the feedback was just, you know, that connection and the recognition that it's okay to talk about mental well-being. And it was probably a language we didn't really use that much before 2020. So now it's very much a common language. And a common, you know, that it's encouraging from our kind of CEO all throughout our leadership throughout the world. It's interesting, we had a call yesterday with the LA team, and we were talking about you know, wave 2, and they're saying we're still in wave 1. So I think it's that kind of learning from each other, supporting each other, you know, talking about mental health well-being, talking getting leaders to talk about their experience and showing their vulnerability and sharing their story. We do that kind of on a regular basis. And that's been really powerful and quite unusual for our leaders to kind of share their vulnerability in that area.
Great. And I guess, Emma, just considering obviously your role, you know, working for a mental health charity, what, in terms of the businesses that you engage and converse with, what sort of conversation and guidance, I suppose, are you kind of providing in terms of supporting and prioritising mental health?
It's very interesting having heard Louise and then the other panelists. We've been taking and recommending a principles-based approach, because everybody's internal landscape, the work they're doing, how things have had to change, if they've got people at home or furloughed or still attending a workplace and so on. So what we've been saying is that you need to be thinking about your staff well-being first and foremost. So how can you be checking in with everyone about how they're getting on, and really supporting your managers to do that well, because they're probably been feeling challenges on our fronts and also might be experiencing challenges for themselves. And then secondly, it's about giving people as much clarity as possible about priorities, both at an organisational, team or individual level, but then also about getting information out to them about new policies, about new protocols that are being put in place. So really great to hear what everyone's been doing. And then thirdly, about how can you create a sense of community when we're all working dispersed, if people are having to self-quarantine. The huge concerns in the first wave, in terms of a survey we did of 16,000 people, 68% of adults had found their mental health had worsened during this period, and around 60% of young people had as well. And the main determinants were around isolation, fear of getting the virus, either yourself or people in your close family. So just trying to offset that feeling of isolation and concern with, you know, moments for social connection. So great to hear what everyone's been doing. And then the final piece is being reflective. We all had to spring into action very quickly. How can you check what's working, what isn't working, and having those feedback loops for staff to tell you things that they don't understand or things that need looking at. So it's really great to hear what others have been doing that does fit within those principles. And I think, as people have said, we can take lessons from wave 1, but I think wave 2 is going to be different, and it's still an evolving picture. And I think the winter months will have a significant impact. So yeah, it's absolutely, what did we do? What do we think is going to get us through the next couple of months?
One of the things that we did recently, and actually it's worked really well remotely, we do these sessions called tuned in sessions, where all of the group exec and also our PLC directors join, and we get individuals from across the whole group to join these sessions. And obviously they're normally in person, but we did them remotely recently. And we just, you know, asked them about what have we done well over the past couple of months and what could we have done better. And it was amazing, because sometimes, you know, when you do these groups in person, you get certain individuals that really dominate. But on Microsoft Teams, you know, we said, if you've got something to say, you can either use the chat or you can put your hand up. And everybody spoke, and they all had a voice. and we got so much rich content. It was brilliant. In fact, so I think going forward, we probably will do them remotely because it really broke down some barriers. It was brilliant. But we just got so much information about actually how can we move this forward.
Yeah, I think that has made a real change in terms of people engaging and working in a digital way. But I think you have to think through how to transition effectively and support people. But I think the functionality we now use with Teams is brilliant. And I think there are opportunities to really transition forward, taking some of the things that have worked well. So I think that's really important.
Great. And I think just listening to the conversation, I think a real key aspect here around sort of providing that wellbeing support to colleagues is really the ability of businesses to be able to adapt through these really challenging times to really ensure wellbeing initiatives are effectively launched across the business. Kat, I wondered if you could just share what you've been doing across your organisation.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. Like having change plans and a transition plan in place is super important. And being that my area and I'm a specialist in that change agent, you know, we really had to think about our communication channels and what really resonated with people now that we're at home. So just really making that clear. So if we're going to send emails, that's something really important. So, you know, people pay attention to those. Then we have Slack, for example, which is our instant messaging platform. We have specific comms that go out to our announcements group for the UK population and the same for every region. But I think what really supported us with adapting to this change was we have our Wellbeing Guardians, which are mental health first aid trained as well. So they really supported us in terms of comms and reiterating any messages. And so, yeah, they're really involved with any wellbeing initiatives or anything that we need to share. What we also did was just tailor any wellbeing initiative or any comms specifically to how people are feeling or what they want to or what they should be doing. So we wouldn't force everyone, for example, to join a webinar or yoga. It was very much like we did a Fetch the Steps challenge, which was specifically to just getting up and moving and got everyone in teams to move around. So it wasn't, you know, just pushing certain classes, which wouldn't land well with everyone. And then finally, similar to what was mentioned before by the other panelists, is that we really had the execs role modeling behavior that we wanted other people to engage with. So, you know, they did daily videos of them going on their walks, or if they had a setup at home, they just showed like, you know, maybe put your laptop here with books propped up so your eye level is to your camera. So yeah, it was just really important to understand how people are reacting to what you're changing, and also getting feedback from them is really important.
Right. And Liz, we haven't heard from yourself yet. It'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, there was a quote by, which I saw the other day and I wrote it down, from the Aldi HR director, Sophie Smith, who said, "It's never been more important to protect our mental health and support others as we navigate these uncertain times." And she's absolutely right. There were, when we talk about retail, obviously that's a wide spectrum of different types of brands and businesses, and where all of a sudden we had supermarkets, for example, that were thrown into key worker status fundamentally, where they had to be open through that time, and then other retailers that were closed during that time. So across retail, there was quite a big mix of different challenges of people, you know, on the front line and those at home. And Louise mentioned it already, but communication is such a critical thing at this time, regardless of whether your people are on the front line or at home. I think that's really important. And I love the video updates, Louise, you talked about. I think that real authentic leadership, when leaders and managers can be on a video and have it in front of those team members for them to see them, is really important. And the great thing about a video, and I've seen other clients do this, is that somebody can watch it when they want to watch it. Because I think one of the challenges we've had with this Zoom fatigue, or whatever you want to call it, is this forced time of having to be on between X and Y time to make sure you receive the information. And I think one of the things we really need to think about as we adapt going forward in this new world is around how people work. Now, we know that we are going to have kids sent home from school. We're going to have, you know, potentially a dependent who needs to be cared for, being isolated. And so the flexibility that we need to give our teams in the retail world of where a shift might have to be changed or the shifts might need to be shorter, a lot of the rigid rules around rota schemes, how people work, how much they work, need to be reinvented and rethought through, so we can allow people to balance the job and what they've got going on at home, which in turn directly affects their own self-worth and well-being. So I think that's really, really critical. So, and then just on the well-being piece, again, just having access to well-being resources and being able to do it in your own time is fantastic. But equally, as Una mentioned, having webinars or wellbeing resources where people do come together at a dedicated time is also a nice balance, because then you get the connection of those people coming together for a shared experience, which again, particularly where you might be living alone or at home on your own, that is really super important. So you're not consuming all information completely by yourself. So I think it's a balance of both.
Right. And I guess just picking up on what you mentioned there, so there's a number of reasons why, you know, one's well-being could be affected. And it would be amiss not to mention, but there is a building amount of evidence and data to suggest that employees that we'd class from underrepresented groups have been disproportionately impacted during the pandemic. So if we take into account other events across this year, so of course, you know, the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, Stonewall have released data revealing the stark rise in homelessness of individuals across the LGBTQ+ community, and really the well-being of 20 to 30-year-olds is fared the worse as a result. So I guess an open question to all of the panelists: what else can businesses do to support the mental health of their employees who may be from one of these underrepresented groups? Or if you've already started actually looking into this, then please, it would be great to kind of hear a bit more as to what you're doing.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, absolutely, I'm happy to share.
No, Kat can go.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that one. And I think we definitely had listening sessions and took on board what the group of our Black employee network had to say, especially at the height of BLM. So not only what was impacting them internally, but what they were seeing externally, they were bringing it in, obviously, to work whilst they were at home. So after listening to them, you know, there were lots of factors that was impacting their mental health, but they really voiced their concerns about, you know, we really need the tailoring support of either counseling or wellbeing resources, which we have and we shared again, but they really wanted to work with counselors within the BAME industry or the LGBTQIA+ community to get them to understand how racial trauma has impacted them. So that was really crucial for us to, which we did was pull together a group of therapists that are within the community to really support them during that time. So it wasn't forced for them to take on that therapy, but it was another option other than the internal tools that we have to support them during that time.
No, I was just going to say, I think that the thing to remember about this is we've all been in the same storm, but we haven't been in the same boat, and people's experiences have been so different and for many different reasons. So it's, as Kat's saying, it's just having those forums where people can share, maybe at a wider level, tapping into your LGBT+ network, your BME network, your parents' networks, just every group where you can kind of hear from staff, but create that space where they can safely share what's been going on for them. But equally then equipping your line managers to have those conversations with people, to hear what they're going through, and then be able to navigate what support's available internally, and then maybe signpost people on to external support. Great to hear many organisations have got mental health first aiders, and again, always key to support them to do those supporting roles, because they can have a lot of emotional distress that they are taking from the conversations they're having with their colleagues and worrying, did I say I'll do the right thing? So again, making sure those support functions are supported. And I think there's also, you know, Brexit, there's the rising transphobia, there's so much at the moment where there was a lot of unity around COVID, which has been powerful at the start, but I think there's also been a lot of division this year, and there's been a lot of as you say, trauma and emotional distress. And I think it's really understanding what people are going through, how you as an organisation can respond, and then also what part you might play in broader societal change. Because I think it's been a real call to action in terms of all of us, even at Mind, looking at how we respond to things around race and institutional racism, as well as other issues? You know, there's such intersectionality between mental health, well-being and equality issues.
The only thing that I wanted to add, and you both just touched on it, is that you just have to make sure it's not an uneven voice. So you don't just seek the advice of the minority groups when you want to go and get that advice, but also that you make sure that they do contribute, and when they do contribute, that you actually listen as well, and when they do volunteer that information up.
Great, and I've just had a look at our Q&A, so we haven't got any questions as of yet, but just to remind audience, please do ask your questions, or even if you just want to share a bit about what you're doing as your business as well, please do. We're all here to share and learn. So I guess a key aspect of any wellbeing initiative is that it is relevant, of course, to the needs of your employees, but wellbeing initiatives are not necessarily launched in isolation, but rather they're an integral aspect of any business. Strategic planning is really kind of at the heart of the business. So how can you create a sustainable and workable wellbeing and mental health strategy? Louise, I know Pets at Home recently won the World Retail Congress Award for Best Employer Initiative in this space with mine. So huge congratulations, what an achievement. It would be great if you could just share, I guess, your experience. You know, I think, you know, from an organisation that may have launched a few wellbeing initiatives to what now seems very much at the heart of the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've had a couple of goes at this actually, and I think the first time around, we just didn't do it right. And, you know, second, we kind of learned from that. And I think second time around, there was a couple of key things, you know, that we'd learned. So first of all, it has to be led from the top. Una said that, you know, it has to be led from the chief executive. In fact, it has to be led from the PLC board. So, you know, above the chief executive all the way down. And that was really key when we sort of set off on the partnership with Mind, that it was very much the CEO who was standing there supported by the PLC board and was very visible in stating how important this was when we signed that pledge. It's also got to be a core part of your strategy, and it's got to be a core part of your investment strategy. So you have to put money behind it. It should be a core part of your budget that you are investing in the well-being of your people. And then I think thirdly is having those right partnerships. So second time around, we partnered with Mind. We have the retailTRUST support as well. And that is really, really key. So being able to tap into those partnerships and work together. So we've, using the Mind programme, we've trained, we don't call them mental health first aiders, we call them wellbeing champs across our whole organisation. And that has really made the difference, because those managers are equipped to have those right conversations. And then behind that, we've got the support so they could then signpost them to where they need to, you know, to get to, depending upon what, you know, help it is that they need. And I think, you know, finally, it's a constant thing. It'll never be done. And so it's to keep, you know, going back over it, you know, getting that feedback and just constantly learning.
Liz? Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I just remember having a mute issue, work on my mute, but I'm here now. Joys of Zoom. So yeah, I mean, just building on that, I think, you know, the leading from the top is so critical. And actually last year, when we spoke at the Retail Summit last year, I heard a really great story from 3 about how one of their senior leaders told his own story of his own mental health journey. And I think where you can have a leader that is prepared to be that open, that is so powerful, because it really opens up that dialogue within the business of making it acceptable to talk about anything. And it is acceptable, but I think people still feel there's a stigma behind it. So I think that's really, really powerful. Then identifying champions, absolutely. Who are those people that are really going to help you on this journey? And then having ongoing meaningful participation. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's all very well having a strategy and having champions, but how are we actually executing it? What are we doing? What's the plan? And the plan can change, and it needs to. You know, nobody saw a global pandemic coming. And when I think back to my tapestry days and our well-being strategy and our agenda we had on the table, that all had to shift when COVID arrived, because the way we had planned to execute that well-being strategy just wasn't going to work when we had the majority of our workforce furloughed or equivalent of in different countries at home. So I think it is that review. And really good to hear from Louise about, partnering with Mind. Like, who can you partner with? Don't be afraid to think, okay, this is a bit beyond us. We're out of our depth. Where do we find resource? What are we doing? And ask for help. Because I've seen organizations where they've tried it themselves, and sometimes that's driven by a budget and being on a shoestring. And, you can get help that doesn't have to cost the business the earth, and you can get lots of resource. But if you try it and you don't know how to keep the traction going, it falls flat. And that can in itself sometimes be actually more damaging for the organization that have felt a sense of well-being and feel engaged and cared for, and then it just disappears. So it's important to keep it moving forward and keep that kind of energy as we push forward. And a really nice model that actually came out of an Australian organization is about, which I love, is promote, protect, support. So how do we promote positive mental health? How do we protect and look at risk factors for our organization, and then support the people that really need that extra help? It's really simple, but it's really nice way of just keeping it at top of mind, I think. So that promote, protect, support. And what have we got behind that that's going to really look after our people?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think you raise a really important point around, really promoting, driving wellbeing, and that is breaking down the barriers and the stigma, and kind of being brave. And it's kind of through that storytelling. So I wonder if there's any of our panel members who've gone through this process, and I guess really, how can we, as businesses, normalise the conversation around mental health and just build it into our everyday discussion with our employees? Any thoughts?
And I can start off if people are happy. I mean, that's something we've always been recommending. I've worked at Mind for 13 years, but I've focused on mental health in the workplace for 10 years. And we were lagging behind having conversations about mental health. Sports people, celebrities, MPs were talking about it. But in the workplace, it was definitely a view, once you say it, you can't unsay it. And what does that mean around your career progression? So it has been powerful, senior business leaders talking about it. But then I think in your organization, you then need to encourage people from across the workforce at different levels to also share their story, because I think you can say, well, they're at the end of their career, they're pretty safe, that of course they can be open. And we've seen Barclays do this. It's called their This Is Me campaign. And then it's been spread across the country. And it's all about saying, this is me. I'm 34, I have a child of 4, I have bipolar. So I think it's really important around, doing that kind of storytelling and leadership in that way. But then equally, it's just asking, as part of one-to-ones, we at Mind, we do a team temperature check at the start of every meeting where people give a score between 1 and 10 of how their well-being is. So I think, it's about building that in and just normalizing it. And I do think that has been a positive of the pandemic. It has accelerated mental health literacy and people having these conversations where they wouldn't before. So I think it's just keeping that. And then there's a tool that we promote, which I can share a link to, about wellness action plans. And again, it just gets people to think about what keeps me well, what might cause me to struggle, what should I do, and what should my manager do? So again, they're just very simple conversations, but it's just giving people the tools to have them.
Just to jump in on the conversations, I think one of the things that I think we've seen, and in a way more so this year with everything else that's gone on, is people being fearful of saying the wrong words, so they say nothing. They actually think, can I say the words mental health? Can I talk, and how do I talk about, even with the Black Lives Matter, challenge we've had in businesses of people saying, well, I'm just going to say nothing. It's worse to say nothing. So how do we allow people to speak freely with no judgment and let them use the language that's right for them? And that's a really tricky thing, and we're into a whole nother world of unconscious bias. But how do we do that the right way so that people can speak up rather than think, I'm going to say it wrong, so I'll say nothing? So it's really inviting those conversations quite openly and directly, and maybe overtly even saying, tell me how you're feeling. Don't be afraid of how you say it, just tell it how it is. And when you overtly say that, people then feel a bit more able just to say whatever comes into their mind without having to filter the language that they're fearful of putting upon it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth, very much following on yourself, what you're saying in terms of being yourself and being afraid of having conversations. So our wellbeing framework is like healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy culture, but with a big focus on culture. And we've tied it in quite almost by accident, actually, into our diversity strategy, which is all about, it's called Be You, URW. So it's about being the best you can be, bringing yourself, whatever accent you have, whatever color your skin is, whatever nationality, whatever religion. And it was one of those, we had a number of serious incidents in some of our shopping malls in LA. And we brought in kind of a very powerful speaker, and basically saying, you know, people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing about race or color or using the word mental health. So we had a whole thing about, should we call people mental health first aiders, because people mightn't want to talk about them. And now it's like saying, actually, no, let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about being yourself. So we had the best frameworks in the world last year, but actually they've only come living and breathing this year. And, you know, whilst we had brilliant strategies and brilliant policies, it's almost by having that honesty and that authenticity of saying, actually, do these even matter what framework they fit into? Or, you know, it doesn't matter how pretty it looks on the website. It's those authentic conversations of, you know, don't be afraid of getting it wrong by not saying anything. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about mental health. So, you know, we had our CEO very much addressing this a few weeks ago. And, you know, it's in terms of, it would not be normal for, I guess, a French CEO to talk about, you know, all these areas, but it's just so powerful when people open up and allow those conversations to happen.
Brilliant. And if we think of launching a wellbeing strategy, as well as considering normalising the conversation around mental health and driving behaviours to create more transparent and open cultures, of course, central to any strategy or business decision is data. Kat, it'd be great if you could share with us what you're doing at Farfetch in terms of how you're using employee data to identify and plan for future wellbeing needs and provision.
Yeah, hopefully my sound is okay this time around. But data is really important for us at Farfetch. I think if I just look back at when we initially started looking at creating our wellbeing strategy, which was about 2 to 3 years ago, we looked at the data that we were gathering. So at that time, it was EAP stats and the ER log, where we were filing away cases that were capturing wellbeing themes, or maybe why people were going off sick related to their mental health or mental well-being. So following that insight, we just captured the key themes, and we realized that mental well-being was very, very important for everyone. So that's how we tailored our well-being approach, which was to raise awareness, equip our managers, and to promote positive thinking. And in addition to that, we know we needed some more data just to really dive into those pillars, if you want to call it. But we also launched Mind. I don't know if many of you know what it is, but it's a mental well-being platform. We do get some data, and myself as an admin will have some insights into just generally how people are feeling with their check-in feature or an index feature, which goes into more detail. But everything is, of course, anonymous. So it just pulls in the key themes. And then that way we know how to react to certain situations. So, you know, at the time when we weren't really sure if we were going to work from home or go back into the office, I think it was probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago, a lot of data was coming through that people were a bit anxious and unsure about things, but they were optimistic as to how things were going to change. So at that time, we were like, okay, we know we need to tailor our approach and really confirm to people and share outcomes and to say, like, we're going to do everything that's best for you all. So that is something that's really important for us and what we use at Farfetch.
Great. I'm just keeping my eye on the time, and I don't think we've got any kind of questions from our audience, but I think if we think of one of the key outputs of today's session, and that is equipping those that have tuned in to go back and launch their mental health and wellbeing strategies across their business. I think it would be great, as we're coming to the end of our session this afternoon, if I can ask each of our panelist members, what would be your one key piece of advice ahead of our audience going back into their businesses and launching their wellbeing strategy? Liz, you are the first screen. So apologies to pick on you first, but it would be great if you could kick us off.
Yeah, no, sure. I'm going to big up Mind, who it's got time to change as part of the Mind world, isn't it, Emma?
It is.
Exactly, and they have an amazing tools, one of which is the mental wellbeing toolkit, and there's one dedicated to the retail sector, and it's really good. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to Emma and Mind and that toolkit. But have a look at that. It's brilliant, and it's just got some really good ways to kick off and start off. So yeah, have I got this right? I've written it down, the mental wellbeing toolkit for the retail sector. I hope I haven't stolen your idea, Emma. Sorry.
No, you haven't snatched it out of my hand. That's fine. You've just supplemented
really good.
it. No, we try to do a lot within sectors and industries. So, you know, there's general things that we know help people, but then we know everybody's operating environment can look so different. So we love doing things in partnership. It's so important. Shall I keep going since I've got the mic kind of now? Sorry.
I'll pass the back on to you.
Yeah, no, it's so hard to have this question because, as we've said, it needs to be top down, it needs to be bottom up, it needs to be side to side, which used to be a much harder sell a few years ago, I'll tell you. But for me, I think it's employee voice within this. I think, you know, I could say line managers are so important on a day-to-day basis, but if it's about how you really understand how you're supporting your people to stay well, it's about having that dynamic kind of temperature check that you're taking from people, getting their feedback on ways of working, what's helpful, what isn't helpful in terms of mental health support and so on. So I think it's just about the tools that you have in place to kind of get that organizational, team and individual picture of how people are and what you need to do to keep them well, and also how to help if they're struggling. There we go.
Hi, I'll jump in. So for me, it's very much continuing to talk, continue to listen, communicate, and providing a very safe area for all of our employees, all of our managers, all of our leaders to voice concerns, to ask for help, to acknowledge that life can be and it will continue to be difficult, and that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to flag when life's just a little bit tough, and have that empathy and authenticity around you. So you can probably have, most companies probably have lovely frameworks and lovely strategies and lovely things in place, but it's just making them authentic for our people. And alive for our people.
Shall I jump in? So I think it's treating mental health like you would do physical health, and making sure that it's a key part of your business decisions. So no matter what they are, mental health is at the core of your decisions that you make.
And Kat, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with everyone, and this is a hard one, but I think for me is ingraining it into your employee journey. So from the time that they're onboarded to when they're leaving, just making sure that you are also looking after their well-being, or just sharing whatever you do internally and just keeping that dialogue open.
Right. So I think that's our time. I don't think, Paul, we've got any questions, have we?
No, none have come through at the moment. I put that down to a great panel. What a broad range of topics and experiences that you've shared. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Amy, for hosting that great panel. And thank you very much, panelists, one and all. What a great discussion. Number of things have come out of that, and I couldn't possibly summarize all of that detail, but communication, that's the theme, isn't it? I think that's come out of all of that. Communication, those channels of communication, common languages, authentic leadership, as well as having the structure of I heard words like well-being guardians and buddy systems, all of those things. What great things to have in place in all your organizations, such a critical part. And I think Louise started the conversation in saying that we're going to have to re-energize. The autumn is coming, the evenings are getting darker, we're going to have to re-energize all our efforts. So you know, it's been a wonderful conversation to listen to. So thank you very much to everybody. We're about to move into a panel discussion to talk about engagement. And so, of course, it's intrinsically linked with the wellbeing agenda. I'm sure a lot of what you've been talking about will be broadened and built upon in our next discussion. So once again, thank you to everybody. To our delegates, we're rejoining again at 2:30. Where as I've just said, we'll be talking about employee engagement. But for the moment, panelists, thank you very much indeed. And we'll say goodbye to everybody just for the moment. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, bye all.
Thank you.